Hello BookTube. Today I'm going to be doing the Pain Over Joy tag. This tag was created by Lady Lovestead Reads, and I was tagged by Steve Donahue, and I will leave links to both channels down below. And thank you, Steve, for tagging me. I did try to make this tag yesterday afternoon, but I had a few issues with it, and I'll get to them as I discuss the prompts. So let's get started. Prompt number 1. Do you mostly read books illustrating pain or books illustrating joy? Why? Well, like Steve Donahue mentioned in his video, what exactly do we mean by illustrate? Are we talking about books that feature pain and joy, of which most books probably feature bits, pain and joy, and occasionally equal or not quite equal measure, but you get pain and joy. Obviously, all fiction is based around conflict, and conflict can involve emotional, psychic, physical pain. Or are we talking about books that end with pain or joy? Sort of life is miserable and full of pain and remains miserable and full of pain, as George R. R. Martin is often to quote when his Jets and his Giants lose, which they do more often than not. Or at the end of the book, you get the happy ending. Or are we talking about tonal, wherein the book tonally wallows in pain and suffering, or tonally luxuriates in fun and joy? So my preference is for, now setting aside the idea that conflict is necessary for fiction to work, and I'm focusing on fiction, that so setting that aside and focusing more on end results or tonal, I tend to prefer books that tend more towards joy than towards pain. Now, that's also, I much prefer science fiction and fantasy to the literary fiction, and literary fiction is its own thing that deals with the human condition and all that, and but I also haven't gotten on with literary fiction for the past few years. It's maybe only 3 or 4 works of general fiction or literary fiction that you could say I actually even like. In science fiction and fantasy, you tend to get more along the lines of a happy ending, although there is the genre of grimdark in which wallowing in pain and suffering is maybe not a strong enough description of what is going on. Luxuriating in pain and suffering, perhaps. I prefer works with a more tonally joyous read, and that's sort of like where the adventure is fun, or when the heroes win, like the tone is a bit more triumphant than it is sort of depressing, I would say. And I also prefer a happy ending over a more depressing ending. But some of the books I read do tend to be quite dark at points. But I don't know necessarily if that really would illustrate or privilege pain over joy. Anyway, moving on to prompt number 2. Do you see books about pain as more intellectually valuable? Why or why not? I think this one is kind of tough. I don't. I wish books that privilege joy were given as much attention as they should. I mean, however exactly you defined works that privilege joy over pain. But I think in part because they're not really all that given as much attention, or at least in my experience, they're really not given as much attention or critical respect as they should be. But I mean, of course, how exactly which genres have the critical and societal praise and which ones don't is, yeah, what it is, and sometimes questionable, but anyway. Prompt number 3. Why do you think major book prizes like the Booker and the Pulitzer mainly award books about pain? Probably because they think those books are more literarily valuable. Or either they present a sense of schadenfreude, catharsis, or sadomasochistic pleasure. I don't know. Depending. I mean, ideally they would be rewarding the best book. But, I mean, that's always questionable. Prompt number 4. Do you use and agree with the phrase guilty pleasure? Why or why not? So the thing about a guilty pleasure is that it's basically eating a whole strawberry cheesecake. That's a guilty pleasure. Because, I mean, it's a pleasure that is harmful. I mean, eating an entire strawberry cheesecake is not going to do your health any good. Unless you go on a massive workout frenzy for the next few days. But on the whole, eating a whole strawberry cheesecake is not good for you at all. But in the terms of reading, that's, yeah, I agree with Steve. Like, this should really be more errant reading or something else, not necessarily guilty pleasure, because guilty really is more really something that's really actually harmful, and reading really isn't that harmful at all. I mean, that said, though, there are some books that I feel, wait, no, that's 6 prompt, so I'll touch on this in not the next prompt, but the prompt after. Prompt number 5. Do you think books centering joy are guilty pleasures? No. And I think this question sort of, and I think the binaristic sort of separating of pain and joy, I think needs to be examined a bit. Because, I mean, obviously there's a privileging here that's going on. To what end, I'm not entirely sure. Because, I mean, why would books that focus on joy or that privilege joy or that, I mean, illustrate joy or whatever, why are they guilty pleasures? I mean, that's, yeah. I mean, that's sort of like, is there something else going on here? And I'll just leave it at that. But most certainly not. I mean, books that privileged joy that focus on joy are just as worthy reads as books that engender pain or that illustrate pain or whatever. Prompt number 6. Do you read in secret? Are there books you read but never talk about because of embarrassment, shame, or guilt about liking them? Well, okay. There are a few books that I do read in secret. Largely that's because I read in the living room, and there's usually, my mom's usually in there. So there are a few books that it's most certainly not appropriate to read in public for reasons. Now, talking about them on YouTube, because I've kind of sort of weaseled about talking about them, and these would be, let me see if I can go grab one. Works like The Moon's Deep Circle by David Holland, which from the cover you can pretty much guess what this book's about. And yes, I do have I do have trepidation talking about it because it's very badly done what it sets out to do. It's it's basically literary porn, well, literary gay porn, and so it's bad. It's terribly written, and the world building's atrocious. Anyway, so there's some embarrassment and shame about the fact that it's terrible. Of course, I don't actually like the book. If it were better written and the world building would have made better sense. Yeah. Anyway, one of these days I might actually break down and just go on a rant about that book. Let me know down in the comments if you would like to hear that. Anyway, but so yeah, really it's the literary gay porn. I do feel some embarrassment about talking about, mostly because who really wants to listen to me talk about that? I don't want to hear me talk about that. So finally, in prompt number 7, who do you tag? I tag you if you would like to do this tag. So that was the Pain Over Joy tag. Thank you, Steve, again for tagging me. I had a blast doing this. So yeah, if you would like to do this tag, please do this tag. And I will see you tomorrow, probably with another tag. Because there were 2 tags I wanted to do yesterday, but this one, obviously some of the questions and my responses to them, I decided not to upload that one. And there was another one that I kind of need to do a bit more work on. So there'll be another tag up tomorrow, and then hopefully on Friday I might actually have an entry into Has Steve Read It Season 2. But we'll see about that. I need to actually remember what books I asked him last year. So until tomorrow, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.